Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Now, I really enjoyed this book. It is so strange. The plot is really unique. It is nice to find something so different to read. The story is about a boy called Jacob who was very close with his grandfather. His grandfather tells him all these stories about the home he grew up in Wales and all the strange children. He has all these pictures of like these kids that are floating, and as Jacob grows over he thinks, you know, his granddad kind of made the pictures up and that his grandfather is just telling all these children's stories. Jacob is very close with his granddad and gets a call from him one day and goes to visit. His grandfather isn't in the house, so he goes out into the woods that's behind his house with his friend called Ricky and finds his grandfather murdered, horrifically murdered. There's blood everywhere. Jacob's freaking out. Ricky says you need to call the police, and Jacob looks up and he sees this terrifying monster with this unhinged jaw and all these tongues, but Ricky can't see it. Jacob has to have counselling from his experience of finding his grandfather murdered, and his counsellor, Dr. Golan, tells him the monster he saw was due to the stress of the situation, and it would be good for Jacob if he travelled to the island his grandfather grew up on and laid some ghosts to rest. So Jacob and his father travelled to this island in the middle of Wales that is cut off from anything. There is no internet, there's no signal, but Jacob goes and he finds the home his grandfather grew up in, hoping he could speak to someone who might have had some records of his grandfather. When he gets there, the home is ruined, it is abandoned, it is rubble that has been destroyed in the war. So Jacob is very heartbroken. He travels back to his hotel, but he soon discovers a girl called Emma, and she can control fire, and he's like, oh my god, are these the children my grandfather told me about? So he follows Emma, he goes through a time loop, and he ends up in 1940s during the Second World War, and he's a bit like, oh my god, what has just happened? And then Emma attacks him, which is nice, and he finds out she can control fire and she has an invisible friend called Millard. As the book travels on, you find out that Jacob is actually a peculiar, that he can see the peculiars' deadliest enemy, the whites. They want to kill the peculiars. Now, Miss Peregrine is a woman who can transform into a peregrine, and she protects the children by keeping them in this time loop, and they can travel out of it into our time, but they can't be out too long or they grow old and die. Miss Peregrine is kidnapped and the children need to get her back. So Jacob has to make a choice. Is he going to go back to his time, or is he going to stay in the 1940s? Because they have to close the time loop because they can't get any more whites getting into killing the children. So Jacob makes the choice to stay, and he helps get Miss Peregrine back, but it comes at a cost. She has had some spell put on her and she can't transform back, and the children are lost without her. Their home has been destroyed, the loop is now broken, the other protectors of the other peculiars in different times have also been kidnapped. They're all alone, they don't know what to do, and that leads on to the second book, but we're only going to talk about the first book today. Now, it has some beautiful pictures, and the author Ransom Riggs collected the pictures first and came up with the story afterwards. Now, that is a really different way of writing a book, and I'll show you some of the beautiful pictures. Weird conjoined child and a dog child. Lovely. There's another child, she can flute. She's also on the front cover. So the pictures are beautiful, and all of the books are like this. There's pictures and then it's based around it. Now, it's such a different story, a different concept. I can't do it justice, but it's beautifully written. The characters are very real. The main female character, Emma, is extremely strong, and that's always nice to read. There is a love story in it, but it's not the main focus of it. It's done very well, that you're like, oh, I hope these two fall in love, without it being the main focus of the story. Now, Tim Burton has bought the rights to this book, and he's at the moment making it into a film, and I've seen some stills, and from what I've seen, well, I'll go see it and make a judgment. Obviously, the films are never as good as the books, and I know it is an adaptation and they're not 100%, but I really hope he doesn't mess it up, like begging he doesn't, because I will be extremely annoyed. I might even write a strongly worded letter. So this copy also has an interview with Ransom Riggs in the back, and you get to know him a little bit better and how he wrote the book, and that I always like to see that. I always like to know a little bit about the author. It also has the first chapter for the second book, Hollow City, in the back of this as well. So if you're like, if you have a little taste of it before you read the next one, I really can't wait to read the third one. So feel free to comment below what you thought of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and what you're expecting from the film. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.